right now.
Good morning and happy hump day.
Yes, good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is May 7th. And before we get to weather and traffic, we are expecting an ABC News special report. As a record 133 cardinals from 70 countries enter the Sistine Chapel to start their secret conclave for a successor to Pope Francis.
At this time, we're taking a live look right now. This is at the Vatican this morning. It is just 2 p.m. there. Roman Catholic cardinals are beginning the task of electing that new pope today, again locking themselves away from the world until they make their decision.
So the cardinals filed into the Vatican Sistine Chapel to start their secret conclave for a successor to Pope Francis, who died last month. No pope has been elected on the first day of a conclave for centuries now, so voting could continue now for several days.
Now, the 2025 conclave officially started just a couple of hours ago, several hours ago actually, at 3 a.m. our time. 89 of the 133 cardinals who are voting need to agree on one person for that person to then become Pope Francis's successor.
And here at home, our Stefania Jimenez spoke with a religious scholar from Trinity University. This is Professor John Francis Burks. He says it is unlikely that the Cardinals will pick the next pope today.
Then there will be 2 ballots Thursday morning, Thursday evening, and the process will continue until the Cardinals have consolidated around a choice.
Right now, there is no timeline for that decision. So while we wait for the next pope, we are asking which qualities you want to see in the next pope. So later today on KSAT, our Stefania Jimenez is going to be anchoring outside the San Fernando Cathedral. This is for our 5 p.m. and our 6 p.m. newscast to get your thought and give you more context into the papal conclave.
All right, taking a look out with live cam right now. Again, 68 degrees outside. Beautiful skies so far, Justin.
It's been a perfect morning. Perfect. We've had temperatures in the 50s and 60s to start. A couple storms down to the south of San Antonio this morning, but that has all moved away. And we're going to get what I think is a pretty quiet day. We can't rule out a stray shower or storm later this afternoon, but all in all, I think it's going to be very nice, albeit a little warm during the afternoon. Let's first look at the setup here because we have a stationary boundary down to our south. It's right along that boundary where we saw those storms form a little bit earlier this morning. Now pushing east, they're east of Houston. Those will continue to make their way out into the Gulf or push towards Louisiana. We're left with mostly clear skies here. And again, pretty comfortable conditions when it comes to humidity and winds. We've got 68 degrees at the airport, northeasterly winds at about 8 miles per hour. They have been a little gusty from time to time. Our forecast today will call for a 20% chance of a storm, but again, I wouldn't bank on it. 89 is the high temperature. Should we see a storm this afternoon, there is a chance it could be on the strong side. I think our better chance for rain arrives tomorrow, and we could see some showers and a few more storms. And then by the weekend, it all dries up and it gets hot next week. We'll talk about how hot those temperatures could get coming up in just a couple minutes.
Thank you, Justin. Let's look out there with TransGuide this morning. Looking over at I-37 at Carolina. Looks pretty empty there, but things are moving. Not on your screen, but on the TxDOT website. Just want to make you aware at Loop 410, I-10 westbound. It looks to be a minor crash there, so just be aware of that. And also at Loop 410 and Ingram Road, again, not on your screen, but just a minor crash to be aware of there as well. Well, we have an update to a story that we've been following involving a school superintendent out of Zavala County. So back in February, La Prairie ISD's board placed its superintendent, Dr. William Arevalo, on paid leave pending an ongoing investigation involving a 6-year-old student. Now, according to an incident report, other employees at the elementary school witnessed the superintendent grab the child's arm and drag her from the hallway roughly 30 feet into a classroom.
According to witnesses, the superintendent locked himself and the child in the room for about 45 minutes to an hour. Now, they have filed an appeal to the Texas Education Commissioner regarding his contract and the situation with the board. Tomorrow, the La Prairie ISD board is set to hold a special meeting to discuss that appeal.
Following this past weekend's election, the final 2 candidates for San Antonio mayor went head-to-head for the first time last night.
And there was definitely an exchange of differences. Our John Paul Barajas was at San Antonio College where this debate took place.
It was a small but packed room last night here at SAC, and both sides had their fair share of supporters, so there was plenty of cheering throughout the entire evening, and even fireworks between the two candidates when they started to discuss future city plans, especially Project Marvel.
So let me ask you, did you answer that questionnaire?
I didn't answer it. You know why? No, hey. Rolando Pablo said, hey, sure, yeah, 50%. I don't know what it is, what's going to benefit, but no, if I don't have that information, I'm not going to phony it up. What percentage? Tell them.
Well, first and foremost, we have to address the issue of you not answering it, period. So here we go. I'm happy to answer. The Spurs need to pay up, but we will not use taxpayer money. We will use visitor money, okay, that will be generated by the same project that's bringing in visitors up to 50%. That's not your money.
It is your money. You know why? Because that money could be invested in other things in our community.
That was one of the most contentious moments of the debate. We did have to edit the whole exchange due to time constraints, but you definitely get the idea. And of course, Project Marvel is the plan to redevelop the area around Hemisphere, which would include a new Spurs arena. Gina Ortiz-Jones was referring to a questionnaire done by the Express News about the project, where Rolando Pablo said he would support funding of up to 50% of it. As you heard, Ortiz-Jones did not answer that questionnaire.
And that was our John Paul Barajas reporting. For now, here's today's 9 at 9. So today is the deadline for you to get a real ID after years of pushing it back. The Department of Homeland Security is enforcing that deadline. So if you don't have a real ID or another accepted form of identification, such as a passport, you could face some delays at airport security. You can expect additional screening and the possibility of not being allowed beyond the security checkpoint if your identity cannot be verified there.
And if you notice prices climbing on everything from groceries to home goods, you're not alone. U.S. and China finally sitting down for that formal economic talks this week after months of a tariff-fueled trade war. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will meet China's top economic official in Switzerland, hoping to ease tensions that have driven up costs for families. And just days ago, President Donald Trump also met with Canada's Prime Minister to smooth things over there as well.
Well, the Federal Aviation Administration has halted the work of an independent team charged with improving the safety of air traffic across the U.S. Late last year, the outside panel of experts began studying ways to reduce conflicts of interest in FAA oversight of air traffic control. The FAA said it and the safety review team agreed to pause the team's work. The FAA says the safety team has not been disbanded or terminated, and it may task it with additional work.
Girls are getting their periods earlier than in the past, and new study sheds some light on one reason why. Researchers found a link between inflammatory foods and earlier menstrual cycles. They found that processed meats, as well as refined grains and sugary drinks, contributed to a first period at a young age. Earlier menstrual cycles are associated with higher risk of breast cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease later in life.
Well, TikTok says it's absolutely confident about its future, even as it scrambles to find a new owner. Despite looming legal pressure, TikTok may be banking on political support. So President Donald Trump now says he has a warm spot for the app and is open to giving it more time after it helped him connect with the younger voters back then.
Weight Watchers has filed for bankruptcy. However, it says that it's not going anywhere. The company plans to keep serving members as it sheds $1.5 billion in debt. It's been tough for the company to compete with the newer weight loss trends like GLP-1 drugs.
A Florida judge letting a lawsuit against Burger King move forward. So 19 people claim that the fast food giant misled them with ads showing bigger burgers than what they got. So Burger King denies any wrongdoing.
San Antonio's topping the charts when it comes to the best barbecue nationwide. Coming in second, right behind our Lone Star State neighbor to the North, Austin, Texas. This is according to Yelp's 2025 top barbecue cities in the U.S. Places like Smoke Shack and Garcia Barbecue are some of the top rated.
And Texas showing some love to teachers for Teacher Appreciation Week. So now until May 9th, educators with a valid teacher ID can claim their choice of a free breakfast menu item between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. And they're also paying it forward, surprising 75 WADA teachers with $1,000 checks for their schools.
WADA teachers, I love that.
That's cute, right?
Yes, 9:07 right now, guys. It is 66 degrees outside. It's still ahead on GMSA at 9.
Well, Mother's Day gift ideas on a budget. If that's something you're interested in, we have you covered after the break. There's Daphne. How you can make Mom's Day without breaking the bank. Welcome back. It's 9/11. Well, Mother's Day, of course, it's Sunday. We all know that when you factor in the gifts, the food, and the flowers, that the price tag can actually add up, especially in today's economy.
Yep, so get this. I was able to catch up with the St. Philip's Culinary Department to see how to make that brunch or breakfast on a budget. And those skills help create a very sweet Mother's Day surprise for my mom and can help you save money where you can while celebrating yours. And good morning. Parents just got off the road from Arkansas last night, so they're upstairs still resting. We want everything to be done by the time they wake up. So let's get started. In order to make this delicious omelet that St. Philip's Culinary Department taught me how to make, I had to go to H-E-B, pick up a couple ingredients. Got my tomato, bell pepper, onion, fruit, and sausage. And the best part about this omelet is that you got many of the needed ingredients in your very own kitchen. And for me, got my cheese, got my spinach, and got the eggs. So let's rock. Non-stick. Just like Chef Jason told me to do.
We got all the gaps filled in after this, so we're just kind of just moving around a little bit.
Now look, I know this isn't as pretty as the chefs over at St. Philip's College, but you gotta admit, this isn't that bad. And I did it all for around $12. And judging by the looks of it, it can feed more than one person. Either way, no matter how it looks, you kiddos out there know for mommy, it's all about presentation. It's surprise time. Hey, Ma. It's time to eat.
Okay, mommy.
Oh, Daddy! Oh, happy Mother's Day. A successful surprise serving as a reminder to anybody out there, if you're like many of us living paycheck to paycheck or close to, there's no shame in spending a little less money in one area while spending a little more money in another area to celebrate Mother's Day. And whether you're a big spender or not, never forget the true meaning behind the holiday, which is to show love and appreciation to the queens in our lives, even if some things have to be done on a budget.
Well done.
It was so funny, and I know a lot of people are just like, y'all celebrated early. Well, we have to because Mom visits from out of town, we had to do Mother's Day earlier than what the typical date is. Either way, she just thought she was getting an omelet, which is why she was like caught off guard with the balloons and flowers. It was really fun, but it also, again, I'm double down on my web article. If you go check it out, I'm specifically saying that this was just one way for you to save in one area if you want to spend in another area, just to make Mom feel loved.
Well, you did a beautiful job overall,
yes,
and that omelet looks like restaurant style.
Oh yeah, ooh, girl,
your mom must be so proud.
Yes, so she's happy. Well, you can check out more stories at KSAT.com, but for right now, we've been following something very important today.
That's right. We're going to go ahead and go into ABC News live coverage of the Papal Conclave.
Special Conclave, the next Pope. Reporting live from the Vatican, David Muir.
Good morning from Vatican City. We are here for the start of the Papal Conclave. The eyes of the world will be locked on the Sistine Chapel from the moment the cardinals enter a short time from now. A short time after they enter, the chapel is then sealed, the cardinals inside, and then we wait until the famous white smoke emerges from the chimney, signaling the newly elected Pope will soon be revealed to the world. At this moment, 133 cardinals from around the world are about to take part in a procession leading into the chapel. 108 of the electors were actually appointed by Pope Francis. This is the most diverse conclave ever. The cardinals are from 71 different countries, including 10 from the United States. They will enter the chapel this morning, the doors closing behind them, and they will begin the centuries-old ritual of selecting the next pope to succeed the late Pope Francis. Now, the cardinals have been holding meetings since last week here at the Vatican, some of them meeting for the first time, each cardinal hoping to learn which one of them has the qualities to become the 267th pope to lead the Catholic Church. All voting cardinals are sequestered. They must surrender their cell phones. There will be no messages or outside communication of any kind, in fact. The cardinals will be sworn to secrecy, and you'll see that play out just moments from now here at the Vatican. Their staff and attendants also taking vows of secrecy. In fact, the cardinals face excommunication if they break their oath. And for all of the beautiful soaring sights Rome has to offer, take a look. That small temporary chimney at the Sistine Chapel is all anyone will be focused on until a decision is made, when the cardinals reach a 2/3 majority inside that chapel. Black smoke, of course, signals there is still no pope. White smoke revealing a new pope has been elected. They'll use chemicals to make sure the shade of the smoke is distinct enough to discern white or black, yes or no, do we have a new pope? Because there has been confusion in the past. A short time after we see the white smoke and the bells toll here in Rome, the new pope will emerge on the balcony right here behind us in St. Peter's Square, greeting the crowds, the faithful in the square, the new leader of the world's 1.4 billion Catholics. Inside the chapel, take a look at the images this morning. The tables are in place, the chairs are now set, and when the voting begins, each cardinal will write their choice and place their ballot one by one inside an urn at the front of the chapel. Each cardinal bowing to the altar and then returning to his seat. They will cast secret ballots up to 4 times a day, 2 votes in the morning, 2 votes in the afternoon. Now, today they're expected to vote once later this afternoon. The ballots are burned after the voting sessions conclude, but immediately burned if a pope is elected. Again, a 2/3 majority is needed to elect a new pope. 89 votes is the magic number inside that chapel. And when they cross that threshold, we will see the white smoke. And inside, the white papal garments come next. They are hanging in the so-called Room of Tears, where the new pope will come to change and pray before being introduced to the world and perhaps even shed a tear under the weight of his new role. Before being sequestered, the cardinals were pressed by reporters from all over the world, the faithful, following their messages in public and on social media, looking for any clues about which direction cardinals are leaning in for a sign of the possible papal contenders and how long it could take to make a final decision. Will they elect a progressive humanitarian pope similar to Francis, or will they choose a more conservative leader focused on traditional values, the traditional teachings of the church? One cardinal telling our James Longman here at the Vatican that if the conclave extends beyond Friday night, it will mean something unexpected has happened. We should remember that Pope Francis was elected in 2 days, 5 ballots. Pope Benedict before him was elected in 2 days as well, 4 ballots. But these cardinals, I remind you, are from all over the world. They must get to know each other, so there's no telling how long this could take. And in fact, in looking back at the history of these conclaves, the longest conclave in church history took almost 3 years, 1,006 days in the 13th century. And of course, we're not looking to beat that record here in Rome this time around. I do want to show you the extraordinary position we have here at ABC News. Right here behind me, you can actually see it. This side right here. Those are the velvet drapes that they actually just put up just a couple of days ago here. That's the famous balcony where the new pope will emerge a short time after we see that white smoke. And of course, the question, and we'll talk about it here this morning, is how soon do we think we can see that white smoke? How long will it take to elect a new pope for the Catholic Church? Our team is here at the Vatican and across Rome, and I'm so happy to have Lindsay Davis here with us. Father James Martin is back with us. We've got Terry Moran, James Longman, Maggie Rulli, and our whole team out across the Vatican. And Lindsay, you can feel the excitement here. You can also sense the uncertainty about which way this could go. And just because so many were appointed by Pope Francis, it doesn't necessarily mean the new pope will be in the mold of Francis.
You're exactly right. The excitement really is palpable. So many anticipating that white smoke. Really a universal symbol that needs no translation. It's been 12 years since we last experienced a conclave, and really every time this College of Cardinals meets, it's to answer one fundamental question, and that is, Are we going to have change, or are we going to have continuity for the head of the church and the 1.4 billion Catholics around the world? As you mentioned, David, while Pope Francis appointed many of the cardinals here today, there are some who felt he was too unpredictable, too progressive. And so they may not necessarily want that continuation. At the same time, you mentioned how this is the most diverse College of Cardinals ever. He was actually the first pope to appoint more cardinals from outside of Europe. And so that will be very interesting to see. There are people who are suggesting, because you have the fastest growth in the Catholic Church in Africa, in the Americas, will we perhaps see a pope of color? People have said that there are critics who say that it's too soon, that the church is not ready. We'll see in perhaps the coming hours and coming days.
Yeah, it'll be a fascinating couple of days here. And in reaching out to the far corners of the world, Pope Francis was given so much credit for broadening the church, naming those new cardinals. But at the same time, Father Martin, in many of those parts of the world, it's a more conservative Catholic church. So that's a bit of the irony of Pope Francis broadening the church, but again, us not knowing how this is going to go.
Well, that's true. And in certain parts of, for example, sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, these are more conservative, you could say, or traditional cardinals. And usually when he was raising up cardinals in new places, it was really as a nod to those places to say, you know, you're an important part of the church, right? And it's not simply for the person or their beliefs, right? I mean, they all believe in the faith, but to raise up this kind of far-flung church. And that doesn't mean, as we were saying, that all these new cardinals that Pope Francis has named are all in lockstep with him.
We're looking at live pictures right now from the Vatican as we await the cardinals making that famous procession from the Pauline Chapel to the Sistine Chapel, not far from where they are right now. You can see the Swiss Guard outside the chapel. Inside, you can see the tables are now set. They line the room, and in front of each chair there is the name of one of the 113 cardinals, 133 cardinals that will be deciding the next pope. And again, we mentioned that 108 of them have been appointed by Pope Francis along the way. 5 of the electors were appointed by Pope John Paul II, 22 by Pope Benedict, and again, 108 by Pope Francis. You have to be under 80 to actually be inside that room. And Father Martin, what's the reasoning behind that? I know that that change came, in 1970 or so, and what were they trying to accomplish there?
Yeah, I think to avoid, you know, what you might call a gerontocracy, where the oldest of the old are the ones that have a say. And it's a nod. I mean, in the church, you know, under 80 is considered young. It's a nod to having something of a more youthful composition of the electors, and also, you know, with an eye to, you know, just having someone who's also mentally there.
They're in the Pauline Chapel right now, and you can see in both of these chapels the magnificent work of Michelangelo. They'll actually make their decision in the coming days in the shadow of the Last Judgment inside the Sistine Chapel. That's where they'll give their oath a short time from now, that they will make sure that this process remains secretive. And in fact, it was Pope Benedict who, in his writings, made sure that everyone involved in these conclaves knows the threat of excommunication if any of it is leaked. They've swept the chapel for any sort of electric devices to make sure that there is no way that folks can listen in from the outside world. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the cardinals have had to give up their phones, any form of communication. A little bit later here, we'll hear from New York City's Cardinal Timothy Dolan. He put out a video statement a short time ago that says, this is probably the last time I'll be able to talk with you for a few days, building up that anticipation, but also driving home the point that these cardinals have now been sealed off essentially from the rest of the world. And James Longman, I know you can see these pictures right along with us. You have been here at the Vatican for many days now, and you can see the weight of the decision that they soon face in the faces of these cardinals.
Yeah, David, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think people imagine conclave to be a kind of a political meeting where there's a lot of talking that goes on. Actually, it's a spiritual moment for these men. The kind of conversation, the bartering, if you like, has already gone on in the last 2 weeks of congregation. And it's been really important for these men to get to know each other. I have been trying to find out as best I can what's in their minds and in their hearts. Very difficult to read, but we've been chasing them down as they've been coming out behind me across the square. The area they've been meeting actually is just to the left of the Basilica as you look at it, and they've been coming back out into Rome every night. We know last night they got their last chance to kind of have a normal life, if you like. We heard that they were going out to their favorite restaurants for some of that food they may not get when they're sequestered. Last haircuts as well, bit of normal life before they return to this very, very important spiritual, heavy moment for them to really kind of look into their souls to find out who they believe should be the next pope. And not just that, who the Holy Spirit is telling them should be the next pope. That's how they see it. That's what they said to me as they came out. And look, I was looking for clues. I don't think any individual is necessarily in the minds of the men I spoke to, but the kind of man they're looking for, that I think they have settled on. Because we've heard it actually from the bulletin that was actually published yesterday. They issued this kind of report on the congregations, on where their heads were at. And they spoke about a man of the church. They spoke about a pontifex, a builder of bridges, which is what that means literally, a shepherd, a master of humanity. And I'll send you back to the funeral of Pope Francis and that homily from the Dean of the Cardinals, Battista Re. When he said the words that the church should be a field hospital, that got a round of applause here. And the Cardinals will have heard that. So this is very much about finding a man like Francis in the way that he was personable, but not necessarily particularly on the direction he took the church. It's a very fine balance. David?
Yeah, those were extraordinary clues, and it wasn't easy, James. For those watching back in the U.S., talk to them a little bit about your interactions with these cardinals. You tried your best, but it also showed that they too take this very seriously. They were guarded and very careful with their words, and some messaging to you that there wasn't much they could say.
No, absolutely. And I think probably, David, because they don't know. If you think back to 2005, there was a sense in the dean, the College of Cardinals back then, that perhaps the name of Ratzinger, who then became Benedict, that was on their minds already. But I think this time the sense I was getting was they don't know. I mean, we would wait outside the gates there as they came out. The cardinals, many of them living in and out in Rome in various different houses and lodgings, in spiritual orders, religious orders as well. And they've taken this time to really get to know each other and hear from each other in these congregations about the main issues that are facing the church. And there have been some bombs dropped, I'll be honest, David, in these congregations. Pope Francis, before he became Pope Francis, when he was Cardinal Bergoglio, when he spoke at his congregation, that was the moment, it is reported, that turned the minds of the cardinals, that showed him to be someone actually that could be a pope. He was named as one of the possible frontrunners, but he very much was not at the top of the list. And it changed for him. It sent him into the conclave as someone that was at the front of their minds. Similarly, this week, what we're hearing is some of these frontrunners, and we don't have to go through all their names necessarily, whilst they might be the frontrunners in the press and in the bookies, they might not necessarily be the frontrunners for these men because of what's gone on in congregations. They may have ruined their chances, not improved them. So much has gone on in these congregations. That's where these men have really kind of been getting to know each other, understanding their positions on the main issues that face the church, unity of the church, the sex abuse scandal that we know has rocked it, synodality, the idea that more lay people should be involved in the church. These are the issues they've been thinking about, and now they're waiting for the Holy Spirit to tell them what they should do. David?
Our chief international correspondent, James Longman, right down on the square, St. Peter's Square for us, watching this unfold here. The majestic view, really, from inside this area of the Vatican, where you will see the procession from the Pauline Chapel over to the Sistine Chapel. And Terry Moran's with us here as well. And Terry, you heard James Longman talk about these general congregations, these meetings leading up to the Vatican. And while many of these cardinals don't know each other well, they've had a lot of time together, certainly in these last few days. And it was during the similar time period, during the last conclave, that James points out that Pope Francis actually, what he said landed with the cardinals.
It did, and it was reported that he said, look, we're talking about our own internal issues. We have to go out into the world. We've got the good news, the gospel, and we need to bring it to the people at the far margins, at the peripheries. And it was a simple statement that really did move hearts and minds, it seems, and that's how Pope Francis was elected. We may see something similar this time.
Terry, thank you. We're now watching Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who of course was Pope Francis's Secretary of State. He will preside over this conclave. He's preparing them for the procession into the Sistine Chapel. And Father Martin, the Dean of the College of Cardinals, Giovanni Battista Re, of course, is older than 80. And his deputies also over 80 as well, which is why we're seeing Cardinal Parolin right here.
Yeah, and it falls to him as Secretary of State to lead this this ritual that is steeped in lots of tradition. Also, he's interestingly mentioned by many people as possible papabile, someone who could be a possible pope.
Again, the cardinals have gathered in the Pauline Chapel, of course, in the Apostolic Palace. The Pauline Chapel, by the way, is at the top of the grand staircase of the papal residence, which separates, of course, the Pauline Chapel from the Sistine Chapel. And let's listen as this procession begins.
Sancta Trinitas Unus Deus, miserere nobis, Santa Maria, ora pro nobis, Santa Dei Gentili, ora pro nobis, Santa Virgo Virginum, ora
You'll remember this from the funeral for Pope Francis as well. They are praying the Litany of the Saints. And we're watching the procession begin, the cross there at the beginning. They're making their way now to the Sistine Chapel, sort of in reverse seniority. And of course, Cardinal Parolin will be at the end of the procession. And again, he will be leading much of what we see today. The Litany of the Saints, they're basically reaching out to the saints and asking them to pray for them.
They are, and David, people who watch the funeral will notice a small change during the funeral. The Litany of the Saints, the response was, pray for him, pray for Francis. And the response today is, ora pro nobis, pray for us. And so they're asking the saints to help them with their prayers as they embark on this awesome task.
And it's remarkable to think, Father Martin, that as you look at this solemn procession and the weight of this decision that they will soon make, that these men know that among them is the next pope.
That's right. And as they say, the Holy Spirit knows. They just have to figure it out. They have to discern. I really do love this Litany of the Saints. It's something that it would have been played at their ordinations, sung at their ordinations, and it is this beseeching of the saints to help them with their prayers. And so they're reaching out to many of the saints, some of whom had been popes in their day.
Just to try to get into the minds of some of these cardinals, and I know I'm not asking you to be sort of an armchair psychologist, but maybe I am. There have got to be sort of hopes among them that perhaps I'll be considered. But you can't be public about it. You can't campaign, if you will, the way we're used to campaigning back in the United States. It's far more subtle in the way they go about deciding who might be a leader to meet this moment for the church.
I think oftentimes the statement is made that anyone who wants it going in leaves it as a cardinal, right? I think generally they're looking at other people who they may want to point others to. And so that's why these general congregations have been so important, to look at other people and to say, have you considered this cardinal or that cardinal? But yeah, I think anyone who wants it is, and certainly expresses it, is almost automatically disqualified.
Father John Walk is also with us for our coverage here this morning. And Father Walk, your thoughts as you watch this procession.
Hello.
Father Walk, it's David
What we're
Muir.
watching
You're
is
on
simply
the air with us, and
what we're watching is the cardinals and now are entering from the Sala Reggia. They're passing into the Sistine Chapel, going from one set of frescoes by Michelangelo to another set of frescoes. It's a rare moment when a bunch of elderly men can upstage the artwork of Michelangelo, but the conclave is that moment.
And Father Walk, the weight of the moment, the history that they will soon make, they must sense that as they enter the Sistine Chapel.
Almost everything that we're seeing today, really from the Mass this morning to this procession, to the Litany of the Saints, it's all designed to impress upon the cardinals the spiritual importance of what they're about to do. This invocation of the saints is a reminder that the whole church, including the church in heaven, is watching them. And they're going to be in front of the Last Judgment fresco of Michelangelo, thinking about their responsibility before God. They're going to take oaths. They're dressed in liturgical garments as if they were going to Mass. This is a spiritual event for them, but also for the entire church, and the entire church is watching.
As Father Walk points out, wearing choir dress, the most formal of what they have, marking this occasion and the significance of what we're watching play out here. It was Pope John Paul II who was the first pope to actually specify that a conclave must take place in the Sistine Chapel. Before that, it had only been recommended, and obviously through the centuries, the conclaves have been held in multiple locations. But Father Walk points out that they will make this decision, and whether it comes today, tomorrow, in the coming days, likely not today, though there will be one vote later this afternoon, they will do it, Lindsay, in the shadow of the Last Judgment.
And as you mentioned, that first vote that takes place today, traditionally that is largely symbolic. That's really to give a nod to the most senior, perhaps revered of the elder members of the College of Cardinals. It is interesting, as you point out, the last 100 years this is taking place inside the Sistine Chapel. The hope is that people will rely less on the politics of the moment and really be more mindful of the Holy Spirit and be moved by God in their decision to choose the 267th Pope in this scenario. What's interesting, Latin, pontiff means bridge. And a number of the people we've talked to say that that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a bridge. They're looking for a shepherd. They're looking for hope.
The first conclave here in the Sistine Chapel was actually back in 1492, and as I mentioned, they've been held throughout Rome, outside the chapel, sometimes outside the Vatican altogether. Once this procession ends here, and this is again 133 cardinals who will take place in electing the new pope. 135 of them were eligible, meaning under the age of 80. 2 could not attend. 133 of them, 108 of those 133 actually named by Pope Francis. You can see them bowing at the altar. A short time from now, they will take an oath as a group. And in that oath will come the words of the importance of the promise to observe the importance of this and the secrecy of this within the church. And in fact, once all of this is done, Father Martin, the tallies of each one of these votes, and again, the first one, as Lindsay points out, is this afternoon. Oftentimes it can be symbolic. It could have names of cardinals that then don't show up in the subsequent rounds of voting. But all of the tallies are then sealed, and it's only the new pope who can give any sort of permission to ever go public with the numbers that they saw inside that room in the initial days of the conclave.
That's right. It's to give them perfect freedom. They are burned in order to destroy all the evidence of the vote. Interestingly, I heard a Vatican insider say to me the other day that the first ballot is almost like a primary, if you think about it. It raises different names, 4 or 5 names of people to sort of sense how much support they have. And then as the balloting goes on, you see who has support, who has been blocked maybe, and then maybe if sort of a compromised candidate has to come up. But yeah, it's supposed to be in total secrecy. And again, this is it's a holy event, and we want everyone to be able to express themselves freely without, being afraid that they're going to be reported on later on.
And there you see at the end of the procession, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. He is considered by many to be one of the contenders potentially to be the next pope. He was Pope Francis's Secretary of State. He's presiding over the conclave because the Dean of Cardinals obviously is older than 80 years old. Cardinal Ray did preside over the funeral mass for Pope Francis that we brought to you back in the States just a few days back here at the Vatican. Terry Moran, they have entered the Sistine Chapel. And as Father Martin said, you've said it before as well, that first vote can sometimes feel like a primary, an early vote, a signal of respect for some of those cardinals who might not make it to the final votes. But it is deeply moving, and some of the cardinals say surprisingly quiet. This is not like a political convention at all inside the Sistine Chapel. In fact, one cardinal once said, if you were inside, you might be bored to tears.
It is a sacred moment, isn't it, David? I mean, I'm thinking about these cardinals who, when they were young men, gave their lives in the service of the church and the service of God and the Christian faith. And here, this may be the most important thing they ever do, the most important task that they ever have. The weight of it is on their shoulders. You can see it in their faces, and yet it's also, in its way, a thrilling moment. This is an opportunity, a fascinating opportunity. I'm thinking back to 2013 when the conclave selected Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, and think how much the world has changed in just 12 years. Politically and culturally, technologically, the church itself, what the world needs from the church. And the global nature of, really, the Pope is a global leader unlike anyone else. This is a global conclave unlike anything else. The questions they're sorting through in their hearts and in their prayers are so different. Such a challenge, so much opportunity. It's really fascinating.
Terry, thank you. And of course, the timing of this, so many of our viewers back in the United States, every time one of these conclaves comes around, the questions are somewhat familiar, which is how long could it take? And there's simply no way of knowing. We had one cardinal say to our James Longman again, if this extends beyond Friday, there were surprises here. Some of the cardinals have hinted that it might not take that long. But again, Father Martin, anyone who says they know doesn't know.
No, and the cardinals aren't talking. And I've met with a couple of cardinals just informally, and they're not saying anything. And, you know, while the Italian press and the worldwide press has their favorites, you really don't know what's going on inside the heart and the mind of an individual cardinal. I think, again, you know, as Father Walk was saying, they're doing this under the gaze of Jesus Christ and Michelangelo's Last Judgment. And they just came out of the Pauline Chapel where they saw the conversion of Paul and the crucifixion of Peter. So even the visuals are going to remind them, you know, of what an important task this is.
The Litany of the Saints continues, and let's listen here for a moment as we approach the oath they'll take as a group. We saw there a moment ago Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, of course, from the Philippines, bow there, and there's been a lot of attention, Father Martin, about Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines. Many have dubbed him sort of the Asian Francis, very popular back in the Philippines and also considered a contender here.
Yeah, I think it's fair to call him the Asian Francis. We don't want to reduce him to simply a carbon copy of Francis, but he's very ebullient, he's cheerful, he's a great evangelizer, he's very well loved in the Philippines. He's known for his sunny demeanor. He also has some experience in the Vatican, so certainly a contender.
They will sing Veni Creator Spiritus, of course, invoking the presence of the Holy Spirit here. As a group, they will do this after the Litany of the Saints. And then, of course, there'll be a moment of prayer. Then the oath that they will take as a group, and then individually, one by one, they will place their hand at the altar in front of the room and put words to their promise to keep this secret and to promise that they will choose the person who they believe would best lead the church. This is a live picture. You see the Swiss Guard there just outside the doors of the Sistine Chapel. Of course, those doors will remain open not too much longer here before those doors actually are closed. And there was a time when they would go into the Sistine Chapel and not emerge until there was a new pope. Obviously, they now go in at the beginning of the day. There are 2 votes in the morning. And if they don't have a 2/3 majority, they take a break for lunch, come back in the afternoon, additional prayer, and then vote again. Each vote can take up to 90 minutes or so because it's each individual cardinal writing their choice on the ballot. The ballot that has Latin on it and essentially says, I am choosing this person, and they write it in themselves, which cardinal they're choosing to be the Supreme Pontiff, the leader of the Catholic Church. And they write purposefully in penmanship that can't be traced back to them, which I find to be so, well, medieval, if you will, Lindsay, knowing that that's actually going to get burned in one of the two stoves in the Sistine Chapel a short time later anyway.
Just so clandestine. I think that's what part of what builds the suspense and mystery. Really sounds like the makings for a major blockbuster movie. Somebody ought to get the script for that together. But you mentioned Tagle, Cardinal Tagle. He would be the first pope from Asia. Of course, you've had 213 of the last popes, 266, who have all been from Italy. So this would be quite a shift. He's known for his charismatic preaching, his ability to attract young people. He even has a broadcast that he does in the Philippines and frequently appears on social media. David, of course, you and I have had our share of covering elections, but there is none quite like this one. When you think about the magnitude of very possibly the most powerful position in the church, in the world, and really picking up that cultural megaphone that Pope Francis held, where he gave support to women, to migrants, to the poor, to members of the LGBTQ community and the environment. Suffices to say, big shoes to fill.
Enormous shoes to fill, and of course Cardinal Tagle is one of several who are considered very strong contenders. He's also known for his karaoke, Lindsay, yes. Apparently back in the Philippines.
Little John Legend, John Lennon.
Yeah, the John Lennon song. Yeah, it did get him, but he chose a few words to leave out when he performed that song.
He's very informal. I was at the table with him at the Synod last year. And we went around the table saying, what would you like us to call you? And he said, call me Chito. That's his name. And I said to him, I cannot call you Chito. Yeah. And he said, no, I insist. So he's very down to earth.
Very down to earth. And that is what he is known as, certainly back in the Philippines. Lindsay brings up a good point, which is they all have to quietly, look within themselves to decide which direction to take the Catholic Church in. They have to decide a pope who will meet this moment as we look around the world, the global conflict, the political balance, if you will, and decide who might be best to take the church forward, and whether or not they do so in a similar way to Pope Francis is one of the major questions going into this conclave. Obviously, Pope Francis wanted to make his papacy about the people at the periphery, on the margins, and he spoke of that. He spoke of that in the days leading up to the last conclave, that we have to, as a church, reach out to people, that is what the church faces. It's existential, that we have to grow the church and we have to reach people and make sure that they feel seen and feel heard. The question is whether or not they continue in that direction, and perhaps they'll do that, but with a different sort of list of issues that are most important.
That's right, and Pope Francis was doing what Jesus did, which is to reach out to people on the margins, people who felt excluded, to the peripheries, as Francis said. But as you were saying, David, it's a different world than it was in 2013. And a number of cardinals said to me, we're not picking a pope for 2013, we're picking a pope for 2025. And that weighs on them as well. What has happened in the last 12 years in the world and in the church, that'll certainly weigh on their decisions.
Terry Moran, we heard from Cardinal Timothy Dolan, who said that he might bring a book about Michelangelo into the Sistine Chapel and spend some time reading, because there are long periods of silence during these votes. And again, as I mentioned, they can take up to an hour and a half for each individual cardinal to write out their choice and then to bring that choice to the front of the room, to place it in that urn. We've seen the camera trained on that urn a couple of times. The power of Michelangelo in that room. We'll come back to you, Terry, in just a moment. Let's listen in as this continues inside. They're going to pray as a group right after they sing here, Veni Creator Spiritus. Again, invoking the presence of the Holy Spirit. They will sing as a group here.
Veni Creator Creator Spiritus. Oremus.
The Cardinals will now take an oath as a group. This is Cardinal Parolin, of course, the Secretary of State, presiding, and we have a translator for the Latin.
Veritatis et pacis. Ut que tibi placita sunt, toto corde cognoscant, et agnita tota virtute sectentur, per Christum Dominum nostrum.
That's the last prayer. That's not the oath.
Of course, the oath that they will swear together as a group and then individually promises to keep the secrecy regarding everything in any way that relates to the election of the new Pope. Let's listen.
Each and every one of the cardinal electors engaged in this election of the Supreme Pontiff promise, vow, and swear that we will inviolably and scrupulously observe with faith and diligence all that is contained in the Apostolic Constitution of the Supreme Pontiff John Paul II, which begins with the words Universi Dominici Gregis, issued on the 22nd day of February in the year 1996, together with the changes made to it through the apostolic letter Normas Non Nullas, given motu proprio by the Supreme Pontiff Benedict XVI, on the 22nd day of February in the year 2013. Likewise, we promise, vow, and swear that whichever of us, by divine disposition, shall be elected Roman Pontiff, will faithfully carry out the Petrine ministry of pastor of the Universal Church, and will never fail to affirm and defend strenuously the spiritual and temporal rights and the liberty of the Holy See. Above all, we promise and swear to observe with the utmost fidelity and with all, whether clerics or lay people, secrecy regarding everything that in any way pertains to the election of the Roman Pontiff, and regarding what takes place in the place of election, directly or indirectly concerning the scrutiny, not to break this same secrecy in any way, either during or after the election of the new pontiff, unless explicit authorization has been granted by the same pontiff. And likewise, we swear never to lend support or favor to any interference, opposition, or any other form of intervention whereby secular authorities of any order or degree, or any group of people or individuals, might wish to intervene in the election of the
Celebrating San Antonio with the city.